When the crisp white leather binder containing the check dropped onto the dark mahogany table, I did not feel the familiar burning sensation of anger. I did not feel the crushing weight of humiliation that had defined my entire existence within this family. Instead, staring at the bold black numbers printed at the bottom of the receipt, $500 even, I felt a strange and entirely chilling sense of liberation. The smell of garlic butter and roasted sea bass hung heavy in the air of the upscale downtown restaurant. It mingled with the sickeningly sweet floral perfume my mother always wore, creating a scent that usually made my stomach tie itself into nervous knots. Across from me sat my younger sister, Cleo. She was delicately piercing a chunk of lobster meat with her silver fork, not even bothering to look up at me. Beside her, my mother, Rowena, wore a smirk so deeply etched into her face it looked like a permanent physical feature. My father, Tobias, simply stared at his empty wine glass. He chose silence, as he always did when his eldest daughter was being verbally executed in public. "If you can't take our parents' insults," Cleo hissed. Her voice was low enough to avoid drawing the attention of the other wealthy diners around us, but it was sharp enough to draw blood. "Pay the $500 dinner check and get out." She said it with such casual cruelty. She expected me to shrink. She expected me to lower my head, apologize for ruining the mood by daring to defend myself, and quietly foot the bill for a massive feast I had barely touched. That was the role I had been cast in since childhood. I was the invisible workhorse. I was the endless bank account. I was the emotional punching bag. But as I looked at her perfectly manicured nails, her designer dress, and the smug satisfaction radiating from my parents, something inside me finally snapped. The decades of financial abuse, the constant belittling, the sheer audacity of demanding I pay for the privilege of being mocked, it all culminated in this singular, crystal-clear moment in time. My name is Maeve. I am 28 years old, and I work as a supply chain logistics manager for a massive international firm. I routinely clock 60 hours a week. I coordinate global shipments, manage massive budgets, and put out operational fires that cost companies millions of dollars if left unchecked. I make a very comfortable six-figure salary through sheer grit, sleepless nights, and an unrelenting drive to ensure I never have to depend on anyone. Because I learned very early on that relying on my family was a guaranteed path to absolute ruin. Cleo, on the other hand, is 26. She works as a junior assistant at a boutique public relations firm. If you looked at her social media, you would think she was the chief executive officer. She curates this pristine, flawless influencer persona. She is always draped in designer clothes, dining at exclusive spots, and projecting an aura of effortless wealth. She is the golden child. She is the beautiful, charismatic daughter my parents always wanted to parade around to their friends. My parents, Tobias and Rowena, are the master architects of this twisted dynamic. Tobias is a mid-level sales manager who cares far more about his country club membership and his outward image than his actual bank account balance. Rowena works part-time as a receptionist at a high-end spa, a job she keeps mostly to get deep discounts on facial treatments and to gossip with wealthy clients. Together, they have spent my entire life shielding Cleo from reality while using me as their personal safety net. As I sat there, the ambient noise of the restaurant fading into a dull roar in my ears, I studied their faces. Cleo popped the piece of lobster into her mouth, chewing slowly, a defiant glint in her dark eyes. She was waiting for me to pull out my credit card, just like I always did. She was waiting for the submission. Tobias shifted uncomfortably in his seat, tapping his fingers on the table, likely worrying that this little spat might cause a scene and damage his precious reputation with the waitstaff. Rowena just sighed dramatically, crossing her arms, playing the exhausted mother dealing with a difficult, hysterical child. I was not difficult. I was just tired. I was tired of being the villain in a story where I was the only one paying the production costs. I reached into my purse. I could see Cleo's smirk widen by a fraction of a millimeter. She thought she had won. She thought this was just another Tuesday evening where she got to humiliate me and get a free gourmet meal out of it. They thought $500 was a steep price for a dinner. They had no idea it was the very last dime they would ever extract from me. What they did not know was that paying this bill was just the opening move in a game they were entirely unprepared to play. But how did we even get to this breaking point? How did I end up sitting in a ridiculously overpriced seafood restaurant, being held hostage by the people who were supposed to love me? The drive back to my house that night was a blur of neon streetlights and the rhythmic hum of my tires against the pavement. The silence inside my car was heavy. It was filled with the ghosts of 1,000 similar conversations, 1,000 small betrayals that had piled up over the years to build the towering monument of resentment I was currently sitting under. My mind became a museum of pain, wandering through the exhibits of my family's staggering hypocrisy. The first exhibit was always the most vivid. It was a scorching summer afternoon when I was 20 years old. I had spent 2 years working double shifts at a greasy local diner. I smelled permanently of stale coffee and fried food, giving up my weekends and holidays just to save up enough money to buy a car. It was a rusted, beat-up sedan with a failing transmission and an air conditioning system that only blew hot air. I bought it myself. I negotiated the terrible interest rate myself. I drove it home feeling a sense of immense pride. I had earned it with my own 2 hands. When I pulled into the driveway, Tobias and Rowena were standing on the front lawn. They did not smile. They did not congratulate me. Tobias walked over, kicked the front tire, frowned deeply, and told me it was an absolute eyesore that brought down the property value of the entire neighborhood. Rowena complained about the oil stain it might leave on the concrete driveway. Exactly 1 month later, Cleo turned 18. I came home from a grueling college class to find a brand new, silver convertible parked in the very spot my rusted sedan usually occupied. It had a massive, absurd red bow on the hood. Cleo was shrieking with joy, jumping up and down, hugging Rowena and Tobias, who were beaming with pride. They had co-signed the loan and paid the hefty down payment out of their savings. When I asked how they could afford it, Tobias just waved his hand dismissively. He said Cleo needed a reliable and safe vehicle for her future, implying heavily that my safety and my future were somehow less important, or at least, less worthy of their financial intervention. That was the day I realized I was not a daughter to them. I was just a tenant in their house. The second exhibit in my mental museum was the financial trap that had ensnared me shortly after I landed my first major corporate job. I was 24, finally breaking into the logistics field and earning a decent salary. I made the fatal mistake of being honest about my income at the dinner table. Within a week, Tobias invited me to his study for what he called a serious family meeting. He sat behind his heavy oak desk, looking solemn, and gave me a long, manipulative speech about family duty. He claimed his company was cutting back on health benefits and that the family auto insurance plan was skyrocketing due to inflation. He looked me dead in the eye and said, "Since you are making so much money now, Maeve, it is only right that you help carry the burden for the family. You are single. You have no real expenses. You should step up." I was young, guilty, and desperate for his approval. I agreed to take over the family phone plan and the auto insurance policy. I thought it would be a temporary arrangement, a way to help out for a few months until they got back on their feet. For years later, I was still paying it. Every single month, nearly $400 was automatically deducted from my checking account to keep their expensive smartphones ringing and their cars insured. Whenever I brought it up, Rowena would guilt-trip me, crying about how hard things were, while simultaneously bragging to her friends about Tobias's phantom real estate investments. But the third exhibit, the absolute crown jewel of their deception, was the apartment. Cleo's glamorous influencer lifestyle required a glamorous backdrop. A year ago, she decided she needed to move into a luxury high-rise downtown to be closer to the public relations firm and the trendy spots where she took her photos. The rent was $3,500 a month. There was zero chance a junior assistant could afford that, and even less chance my parents could float that kind of cash. So, Tobias came to me again. This time, the manipulation was masterful. He told me it was an investment in Cleo's future. He said she needed to project success to achieve it. He begged me to just act as the guarantor on the lease. He swore up and down that he and Rowena would cover the rent every month, but they just needed my excellent credit score and high income to secure the unit. I should have known better. I really should have. But the pressure was immense, and I signed the paperwork. For the first 2 months, they transferred the money. In the third month, the transfer was short by $500. Rowena called and said it was a temporary cash flow issue. By the 5th month, the transfers stopped entirely. When I panicked and confronted them, Tobias yelled at me. He said I was being selfish, that I made plenty of money, and that I was trying to sabotage my sister's career out of jealousy. If the rent was not paid, the eviction would go on my pristine credit report, ruining my own financial future. They had me trapped. For the past 7 months, I had been silently bleeding $3,500 every 30 days, funding my sister's fake life while I lived in a modest, practical townhouse in the suburbs. My parents played the role of the generous benefactors to her face, while I was the invisible bank working overtime to keep the lights on. If you have ever sacrificed your own financial stability to keep the peace in a toxic family, only to be treated like an inconvenience, let me know in the comments below. Returning to the story, the burden had finally become unbearable. The week leading up to the infamous seafood dinner had been a complete nightmare of logistical failures at work. A major port strike on the West Coast had delayed 3 of my largest shipments, and I was spending my days in endless crisis management meetings. I was fueled by nothing but black coffee and sheer willpower. I was exhausted down to my bones. My eyes burned constantly from staring at complex spreadsheets, and my patience was thinner than paper. While I was working 14-hour days trying to salvage multi-million-dollar contracts, Cleo was busy living her best life on my dime. I took a rare 10-minute break on a Wednesday afternoon, scrolling mindlessly through social media while eating a sad, cold turkey sandwich at my desk. There it was, Cleo's latest post. She was standing on the glass balcony of the luxury high-rise, wearing a silk robe, sipping a mimosa. The city skyline stretched out behind her in a perfect, golden hour glow. The caption read, "Sunday mornings in my sanctuary. So blessed to have parents who support my dreams and helped me secure this gorgeous space. Hard work pays off." She tagged Tobias and Rowena. I stared at the screen, a bitter taste rising in my throat. Hard work. The only hard work she did was finding the right filter to hide the fact that her entire existence was subsidized by the sister she openly despised. The comments section was flooded with her friends praising her success and admiring her beautiful home. I felt a surge of physical nausea. I was paying $3,500 a month for that balcony, for that view, so she could pretend to be a self-made woman while I ate cold meat at my desk. The very next day, my phone rang. The caller ID flashed Rowena's name. I answered, keeping the phone sandwiched between my ear and my shoulder as I desperately typed an urgent email to a shipping vendor. "Maeve, listen to me," Rowena began. She skipped any form of greeting, diving straight into her demands. "Cleo's birthday is coming up next weekend. She is throwing a big networking party at the apartment. She needs to invite some senior executives from her firm, and it has to look incredibly professional." "Okay," I said, my voice flat and lifeless. "Tell her happy birthday for me." "Do not play dumb, Maeve," Rowena snapped, her tone instantly turning hostile and defensive. "We need you to transfer an extra $1,000 by Friday. She needs to hire a caterer and a private bartender. It is crucial for her image at the public relations firm. She cannot serve cheap wine and chips to these people." I stopped typing. The sheer audacity of the request left me temporarily speechless. The silence stretched for several seconds. "You want me to give you $1,000 for a party? In an apartment I already pay for every single month." "We are all making sacrifices for her career," Rowena said, her voice dripping with fake martyrdom. "Your father and I are paying for the floral decorations and her new designer dress. The least you can do is help with the catering. You have the money, Maeve. Stop hoarding it like a miserable miser when your sister's future is on the line." "No." The word slipped out before I could even process it. There was a dead silence on the line. "Excuse me," Rowena whispered dangerously. "I said no, Mom. I am not paying $1,000 for a bartender so Cleo can impress people with money she does not actually have. I am already paying the massive rent you swore you would cover. I am entirely done. You selfish, jealous girl, Rowena hissed, her voice vibrating with rage. You cannot stand that she is doing so well, can you? You just want to see her fail because your own life is so boring and miserable. Fine. We will figure it out without your precious help. But you are coming to the family dinner on Saturday, and you will behave yourself. We are going to that nice seafood place downtown. Do not embarrass us. She hung up, the line clicking dead in my ear. I sat at my desk, my hands shaking with a toxic mixture of rage and exhaustion. The family dinner. It was always their favorite way of reasserting control. They would drag me to a public place where I could not yell or cause a scene, and they would systematically tear me down until I complied just to make it stop. They thought Saturday would be no different. They were so tragically mistaken. The stage was set, the actors were in place, and the curtain was about to rise on a performance they would never forget. Saturday evening arrived with a suffocating humidity that perfectly matched my mood. I had driven to the restaurant, picking up Tobias, Rowena, and Cleo along the way because Tobias claimed his car was making a weird noise, and he did not want to risk breaking down on the highway. The ride was a nightmare. It was filled with Cleo complaining endlessly about the temperature in my car and Rowena criticizing my driving skills at every intersection. I gripped the steering wheel, my knuckles white, keeping my mouth firmly shut. The restaurant was loud, opulent, and exactly the kind of place my family loved to be seen in, even though they could rarely afford it themselves. We were seated at a large, plush circular booth near the center of the main dining room, right under a massive crystal chandelier. The verbal assault began before the waiter even brought our water glasses. Rowena leaned across the table, her eyes scanning my simple navy blouse and practical black slacks. "Maeve, dear," she said, her voice dripping with fake, sugary concern, "are you feeling all right? You look so washed out. Dark circles do not suit you at all. You really should ask Cleo for some skincare advice. She always looks so radiant and fresh." "I work 60 hours a week, Mom," I replied evenly, opening my leather-bound menu to avoid looking at her. "My job is demanding." Tobias snorted loudly, adjusting his shirt collar. "Demanding? You sit behind a desk and track shipping boxes, Maeve. It is not exactly saving lives. Look at your sister. She is out there networking, building a brand, rubbing elbows with important executives. That is real pressure. You just push paper around." Cleo smiled modestly, fluffing her perfectly styled hair. "It is exhausting, honestly. The public relations world never sleeps. But you have to hustle if you want to make a name for yourself. Not everyone is cut out for the spotlight. Some people are just meant to be in the background." I took a slow, deep breath, trying to control the pounding in my chest. I ordered a simple house salad and a glass of ice water. Cleo ordered the most expensive lobster dish on the menu, a dozen raw oysters, and a premium craft cocktail. Tobias and Rowena followed suit with massive steaks and expensive imported wine. They ordered with the casual, breezy confidence of people who knew they were not going to see the bill at the end of the night. Throughout the meal, they tag-teamed me relentlessly. Rowena criticized my lack of a romantic partner, suggesting that if I put a little effort into my physical appearance, I might find someone willing to settle for a workaholic. Tobias complained loudly about the economy, hinting heavily that children who succeed have a moral obligation to elevate their parents' lifestyle. "It is just a shame," Rowena sighed, taking a delicate sip of her red wine. "We raised 2 daughters in the exact same house, with the exact same values. One turns out to be a shining star and the other just exists. It is heartbreaking, really, to see you waste your potential being so plain and miserable." I set my fork down. The heavy silver metal clinked sharply against the porcelain plate. The noise cut through their conversation like a knife. "I am not miserable, Mom," I said, my voice low and steady. "I am just tired of sitting at this table, listening to the 3 of you insult me while secretly relying on my bank account to survive." Tobias turned bright red instantly. He looked around frantically. "Keep your voice down, Maeve. Do not start this nonsense in public." "It is not nonsense, Dad. It is the truth. You degrade my job, but my job is paying for that lobster Cleo is eating right now. It is paying for the phones in your pockets. It is paying for the roof over her head. That was when Cleo dropped her fork. She glared at me, her face contorted with ugly, arrogant rage. She leaned forward, locking eyes with me, delivering the line that would shatter our family forever. If you can't take our parents' insults, Cleo hissed, her voice venomous, pay the $500 dinner check and get out. She leaned back against the leather booth, crossing her arms, waiting for the devastating blow to land. She waited for me to back down. Instead, a profound, icy calm washed over me. I looked at Cleo. I looked at my mother, who was nodding in agreement. I looked at my father, who was staring intently at the tablecloth. You know what, Cleo? I said softly. That is the best advice you have ever given me. I signaled the waiter, who had been hovering nervously nearby. He handed me the leather binder. I did not even look at the itemized list. I handed him my credit card. The machine beeped, I signed the receipt, and I stood up. What are you doing? Tobias asked, his voice wavering slightly. I am taking Cleo's advice, I said, grabbing my purse and sliding out of the booth. I paid the $500. And now I am getting out. Rowena scoffed loudly. Oh, stop being dramatic, Maeve. Sit down this instant. No, I replied. Enjoy your meal. And just a reminder, I drove us here. You three will need to figure out how to get home. Have a wonderful evening. I turned on my heel and walked out of the restaurant. I did not look back. I stepped into the cool night air, walked to my car, and drove away, leaving them stranded. I left them at the table, but the real consequences of their actions were going to hit them much harder than an expensive cab ride home. The next morning, Sunday, the sun was shining brightly, completely mocking the dark storm brewing in my family group chat. My phone had been vibrating aggressively on the kitchen counter since 7 in the morning. I sat at my kitchen island with a large mug of strong black coffee, watching the notifications roll in one after another. Cleo was absolutely losing her mind. Message from Cleo. I cannot believe you abandoned us. An Uber XL cost $80 because of surge pricing. You are insane. Message from Cleo. Mom was literally crying on the ride home. You ruined everything. You owe us $80 immediately. Message from Tobias. Maeve, your behavior last night was unacceptable. We will discuss your apology when you come over for Sunday lunch today. Do not be late. I took a slow sip of my coffee. There would be no Sunday lunch. There would be no apology. They wanted to treat me like a disposable wallet? Fine. I would close the bank permanently. I opened my laptop. The screen glowed to life, illuminating the quiet kitchen. I felt a surgical, cold detachment to what I was about to do. I was not doing this out of anger anymore. I was doing it out of a primal need for survival. I was excising a tumor that had been draining my life for years. First, I logged into my mobile carrier's web portal. My account dashboard loaded, displaying 4 active phone lines. My line, Tobias's line, Rowena's line, and Cleo's line. For years, I had paid the massive data overage charges Cleo racked up posting her fake life. I navigated to the line management section. Click. Select Tobias. Disconnect line. Click. Select Rowena. Disconnect line. Click. Select Cleo. Disconnect line. A warning box popped up, informing me that the service for those numbers would be suspended at midnight unless a new billing method was attached. I clicked confirm without hesitation. It took less than 2 minutes. Next, I opened a new tab and went to the website for my auto insurance provider. The policy covered my reliable sedan, Tobias's luxury SUV, Rowena's sedan, and Cleo's silver convertible. I navigated to the policy adjustment page. I removed their 3 vehicles one by one. The system automatically recalculated my premium. My monthly bill plummeted from $450 to just $80. I confirmed the changes and requested that an immediate email confirmation be sent to my inbox. The digital receipt arrived seconds later. Then came the final, most satisfying cut of all. I logged into my online banking portal. I navigated to the scheduled automatic transfers section. There it was, sitting like a massive parasite on my ledger. Monthly rent transfer. Luxury apartments. $3,500. I hovered my cursor over the trash can icon. My hand did not shake. I clicked delete. The screen refreshed. The scheduled transfer was completely gone. I sat back in my chair and exhaled deeply. I had just saved myself nearly $4,000 a month with a few clicks. But the financial relief was nothing compared to the immense psychological weight that lifted off my shoulders in that moment. I did not send them a warning text message. I did not write a long, emotional email explaining my actions. They did not deserve an explanation. They had demanded I pay the $500 and leave. I was simply following their instructions to the absolute letter. I paid, and I was leaving their financial lives forever. I spent the rest of Sunday cleaning my house, doing laundry, and preparing for the busy work week ahead. I felt completely at peace for the first time in my adult life. I went to bed early, knowing that when the clock struck midnight, the digital lifelines connecting them to my wallet would be severed entirely. Monday morning arrived. I was at my desk by 8 o'clock, reviewing complex shipping manifests. At exactly 9:15, my desk phone rang loudly. It was an external number. "Hello, Maeve speaking," I answered professionally. "Maeve, what the hell is going on?" Tobias's voice boomed through the receiver, loud enough that I had to pull the phone away from my ear. He must have been using his office landline. "Good morning, Dad. Please lower your voice." "I am at work," I said calmly. "My cell phone says it has no service. Your mother cannot make calls. And I just got a letter in my email from the insurance company saying our auto coverage was canceled. Did your accounts get hacked? You need to call the bank immediately and fix this mess." He was frantic, his usual arrogant tone completely replaced by sheer panic. "Nothing was hacked, Dad," I replied, my voice steady and cold as ice. "I canceled the services." There was a stunned, breathless silence on the other end of the line. You did what? Why would you do that?" "Because you have your own money, Dad. You have your investments, remember? The ones Mom is always bragging about to her friends. I am just adjusting my personal budget. You are adults. You can pay your own bills from now on." "This is about the dinner, isn't it?" he demanded, his anger returning rapidly. "You are throwing a temper tantrum because Cleo hurt your feelings." "No, Dad. I am setting a boundary. I am no longer financing people who use my money to fund a luxury lifestyle while simultaneously telling me I am worthless. Fix your own phones. Buy your own insurance. Do not call my office again." I hung up the phone gently. I could imagine his face turning purple in his cubicle. The first domino had fallen. But the biggest crash was yet to come. Severing the phone plans and the auto insurance was the easy part. It was an immediate, highly satisfying inconvenience for them. But the apartment was a complex legal matter, and I needed to handle it with absolute precision to protect myself from any future liability. During my lunch break, I closed my office door and pulled out the thick lease agreement I had saved in my personal files. I found the contact information for the property manager of Cleo's luxury building. Her name was Veda. I dialed the number. Veda answered on the second ring, her voice professional and crisp. "Hi Veda, this is Maeve," I said. "I am the primary guarantor and leaseholder for Unit 412. The unit my sister, Cleo, currently occupies." "Ah, yes, Maeve. How can I help you today?" Veda asked warmly. "I need to officially notify you that I am terminating my involvement with this lease," I stated clearly. "I am submitting my 30-day notice to vacate, as per the terms of the month-to-month agreement we entered after the first year expired. I will no longer be making any rent payments after this current month, and I am formally withdrawing my financial guarantee for the unit." I could hear the clicking of a keyboard as Veda pulled up the file on her end. "Okay, let me review the account details. Yes, you are listed as the primary financial responsible party. Cleo is only listed as an occupant. Since the lease is now month-to-month, a 30-day written notice from you is sufficient to terminate the agreement entirely. However, you understand that this means the unit must be surrendered, or the occupant must qualify for the lease entirely on their own income." "I understand perfectly," I said. "Cleo does not have the income to qualify. I want a formal notice of termination and a 30-day notice to vacate sent to the unit immediately." I want it on official record that I am closing this account. Understood, Veda said, her tone shifting slightly. I could tell she sensed the family drama beneath the rigid legal request. I will draft the notices right now. One will be emailed to you for your records, and the physical notice to vacate will be posted directly on the front door of Unit 412 by tomorrow afternoon. If the occupant does not vacate or secure a new lease, the formal eviction process will begin. But as long as you have provided your notice, you will be completely absolved of future rental charges beyond the 30 days. Thank you, Veda. Please send me the email confirmation as soon as possible. I hung up the phone. It was done. The massive safety net was officially cut. Before I returned to my logistics reports, I opened a new Excel spreadsheet. I needed to see it for myself. I needed to quantify the exact weight of the financial burden I had been carrying for my toxic family. I started pulling up years of digital bank statements. I created columns: phones, auto insurance, luxury rent, emergency loans, birthday money, and miscellaneous expenses. I started typing in the numbers. For years of exorbitant phone bills. For years of premium auto insurance for 3 extra cars. 7 months of luxury downtown rent. Countless transfers for Cleo's constant emergencies. A broken laptop here. A necessary vacation for her mental health there. A designer handbag she absolutely needed to look professional at an event. I highlighted the final cell at the bottom of the sheet and applied the sum formula. When the bold black number appeared on the screen, the breath was knocked completely out of my lungs. $142,560. I stared at the screen, a physical wave of nausea washing over my entire body. I had given them over $140,000. That was a massive down payment on a beautiful house. That was an incredibly healthy retirement fund. That was a life of ultimate security and comfort that I had handed over to people who treated me like absolute garbage. The number was shocking. It was a terrifying testament to my own blindness and their relentless, bottomless greed. I printed the spreadsheet. I folded it neatly and put it in my purse. It was the physical evidence of my servitude, and it was going to be my absolute shield when the inevitable war began. Because I knew they were not going to go down quietly. Tobias would rage and threaten. Rowena would cry, manipulate, and play the ultimate victim. Cleo would unleash a social media storm to destroy my reputation. They were going to try to shame me into submission. But they did not know about the spreadsheet, and they did not know I had already sent a digital copy of it to Uncle Evander, my father's older brother, the one person in the family who could actually do something about it. If you are enjoying this story and want to see how the rest of the family reacts when the money completely dries up, please hit that subscribe button and leave a like. Your support means everything to the channel. Now, let's see what happened when the eviction notice finally arrived. By Tuesday evening, the harsh reality of my actions had fully materialized in the lives of my family members. I was sitting in my living room, enjoying a quiet, peaceful evening. I had poured myself a hot cup of chamomile tea, wrapped a knitted blanket around my shoulders, and opened a novel I had been trying to finish for months. For the first time in years, my phone was entirely silent. The constant, gnawing anxiety that usually accompanied my evenings, the fear of an incoming demand for money or a manufactured crisis, was gone. Then, the heavy thud of tires screeching onto the concrete of my driveway shattered the peace. I did not need to look out the front window to know who it was. The aggressive, reckless slamming of a car door confirmed it. The doorbell did not just ring, it was held down in a continuous, angry, buzzing assault, followed instantly by heavy fists pounding on the solid wood of my front door. The house echoed with the violent noise. I took a slow sip of my tea, set the porcelain cup down on the coaster, took a deep breath, and walked into the hallway. I flipped on the porch light, unlocked the deadbolt, and pulled the heavy wooden door open, deliberately leaving the sturdy metal screen door firmly shut and locked between us. Tobias stood on my porch. His face was flushed a deep, dangerous shade of crimson, glistening with a thin layer of nervous sweat. He was still wearing his corporate work suit, though the expensive silk tie was yanked loose and his usually perfectly styled hair was disheveled. He looked less like a proud, successful sales manager and more like a desperate man who had just realized the solid ground beneath him was rapidly turning into quicksand. "Open this door right now, Maeve," he barked, his voice echoing loudly in the quiet suburban street, carrying over the manicured lawns of my neighbors. "We need to have a very serious conversation about your erratic behavior." "We can talk just fine through the screen, Dad," I replied, keeping my voice entirely level and devoid of any emotion. "What can I do for you this evening?" "Do not use that condescending tone with me," he snapped, pointing a trembling, accusatory finger at the steel mesh wire separating us. "You are going to walk over to your computer, log into your accounts right this second, and reinstate the family auto insurance policy. Do you have any idea how much a brand new policy costs for 3 vehicles with 0 prior warning or continuous coverage history? They want an enormous down payment. They are treating us like high-risk drivers. I do not have that kind of liquid cash just sitting around and checking to fix your petty mess." I leaned against the doorframe, crossing my arms over my chest, studying his panicked expression. "That is really strange," I said, tilting my head slightly to the side. "You and Mom are always bragging to the entire extended family about your massive, diversified investment portfolios. You told Aunt Clara just last Thanksgiving that your real estate dividends were paying for all of Cleo's luxury upgrades. Surely, a simple insurance premium down payment is mere pocket change for such savvy, wealthy investors. Just dip into the mutual funds, Dad." His face contorted violently. A flash of genuine, terrifying panic crossed his eyes before a mask of sheer anger quickly covered it up again. "Do not be smart with me, Maeve. You know our money is tied up in long-term, illiquid assets. We cannot just pull cash out on a whim without facing massive tax penalties. You are putting our livelihoods at severe risk over a childish grudge. If I get pulled over driving without insurance, I could lose my license, and then I would lose my job. Is that what you want? Then I highly suggest you drive very carefully and obey all traffic laws until you save up the necessary down payment," I answered softly, refusing to take his bait. "You are a 55-year-old man. It is not your daughter's responsibility to insure your luxury sports utility vehicle." Before he could launch into another manipulative tirade, his smartwatch buzzed loudly on his wrist. Since I had cut off his cellular data the night before, he was clearly relying on my home's faint Wi-Fi signal leaking out onto the front porch. He glanced down at his wrist, and his jaw literally dropped. The remaining color drained from his face. "Cleo's credit card was just declined," he read aloud, the shock evident and raw in his tone. "She is at a massive public relations networking event at a high-end rooftop bar downtown. She was supposed to buy a round of drinks for the senior partners to secure her promotion. The bartender cut up her card in front of everyone. She is humiliating herself right now." I felt a brief, sharp pang of vindication wash over me. I had forgotten that I had also added Cleo as an authorized user on one of my backup credit cards 4 years ago. It was supposed to be for extreme, life-threatening emergencies only. She had clearly mistaken a networking bar tab for a medical crisis. I had proactively locked that card on Monday morning along with everything else, anticipating she might try to use it. "She will have to learn how to network and build her career without resorting to financial bribery," I said simply. "Or perhaps she can call her wealthy parents and ask them to wire her some emergency funds." Tobias glared at me, his fists clenched tightly at his sides, his chest heaving. "You are destroying this family, Maeve. You are sick with jealousy. You are deliberately sabotaging your own sister because you know you will never be as vibrant, charming, or successful as she is. Your mother is right about you. You are a bitter, lonely girl who wants everyone else to be as miserable as you are." When his words failed to elicit any reaction from me, he turned around, stomped heavily down the wooden porch steps, and got back into his uninsured vehicle. He peeled out of my driveway, the tires squealing in protest, leaving a thick trail of dark exhaust hanging in the evening air. I walked back into my living room, my heart beating slightly faster than before, but my resolve remained unbroken. I sat down and opened my laptop to check my work emails, but a bright red notification on my social media dashboard caught my eye. It was from Rowena. Despite having no active cellular service, my mother had apparently found a public Wi-Fi connection and decided to weaponize her victimhood on a very public stage. She had posted a lengthy, incredibly dramatic status update, tagging dozens of our aunts, uncles, and cousins. The post read, "It breaks a mother's fragile heart to see her own flesh and blood turn their back on the family that raised them. We raised both our daughters to support one another, to lift each other up in times of need. But sometimes, the green-eyed monster of jealousy takes root in a dark, unforgiving heart. Our eldest daughter has decided to cruelly cut ties and financially sabotage her younger sister's blossoming career out of pure, unadulterated spite. We are devastated, we are heartbroken, but we will survive this terrible betrayal. Family is everything, except to those who have no heart." I read the words twice. The sheer, calculated manipulation of it made my skin crawl. She was intentionally painting herself as the weeping, wounded matriarch and Cleo as the innocent victim of my unprovoked cruelty. She wanted to isolate me from the rest of the family. She wanted the entire extended network of relatives to shame me into coming back to the fold, begging on my knees for forgiveness and opening my wallet once again. But Rowena had made a fatal, arrogant miscalculation. She assumed she was the only one controlling the narrative. She did not know that the truth was already armed, loaded, and waiting patiently in the wings. The fallout from Rowena's public declaration of martyrdom was instantaneous and aggressive. My phone, which was still fully operational on my own private, secure plan, began to light up with a relentless stream of notifications. The flying monkeys had been deployed, eager to do my mother's bidding without knowing a single fact about the situation. My cousin Sarah sent a scathing text message calling me a heartless sociopath for abandoning my sister when she needed me the most. My Aunt Linda, who rarely spoke to me unless she needed technical support for her iPad, left a long, rambling voicemail. She spoke for 4 minutes about how God punishes those who disrespect their parents and how I was inviting bad karma into my life. In the comment section of Rowena's social media post, the extended family was having an absolute field day. They praised Rowena for her unimaginable strength, offered their deepest prayers for Cleo's allegedly ruined career, and hurled thinly veiled insults at my character, my appearance, and my career. I sat comfortably on my couch, sipping my lukewarm chamomile tea, watching the digital fire burn out of control. I did not reply to a single text message. I did not delete the nasty comments. I just watched the screen, waiting for the inevitable intervention. I had sent the comprehensive spreadsheet detailing the $142,560 to Uncle Evander on Monday afternoon, shortly after finalizing the legal termination of the lease. Evander was Tobias's older brother. Unlike my father, Evander was a genuine self-made man. He owned a highly successful chain of regional hardware stores, lived a very quiet, unassuming life, and possessed a razor-sharp intolerance for nonsense and flashy displays of fake wealth. He had always looked at Tobias's arrogant lifestyle with quiet, calculating suspicion, but he had never had the hard, undeniable evidence to call him out. Now he possessed a fully itemized ledger. At exactly 8 o'clock in the evening, the specific notification I had been waiting for popped up on my screen. Evander has commented on Rowena's post. I clicked the notification with a sense of grim anticipation. The comment section, which had been a toxic, self-congratulatory echo chamber of sympathy for my mother, suddenly ground to a screeching, painful halt. Evander did not just leave a simple comment. He dropped a tactical truth bomb on their fabricated reality. Evander's first comment read, "Rowena, you need to delete this embarrassing work of fiction right now before I post the PDF files for everyone to see. Maeve is not jealous of Cleo's blossoming career. Maeve has been funding Cleo's entire existence, and yours too." He did not stop there. Before anyone could even formulate a reply, he followed it up with a second comment, attaching 2 heavily redacted screenshots. The first screenshot was the summary block from my Excel spreadsheet. It clearly showed the massive totals paid for their auto insurance, their endless phone bills, and the staggering sum paid for Cleo's luxury apartment rent. The second screenshot was the first page of the formal lease agreement for Unit 412. It clearly highlighted my name as the primary leaseholder and sole financial guarantor, with Cleo listed merely as a guest occupant with zero financial responsibility. Evander's third comment was the final, brutal nail in the coffin. You and Tobias have been bleeding your eldest daughter dry for over 4 years to the tune of $140,000. You lied to all of us about your brilliant investments. You lied about Cleo being a self-made success. The only thing Maeve sabotaged was your free ride. Leave the girl alone, or I will make sure the entire family sees every single bank statement, down to the penny. The silence on the digital platform was deafening. The very same cousins who had been eagerly insulting me just minutes ago suddenly deleted their comments in a desperate panic. Aunt Linda's profile went entirely dark. The ugly, unvarnished truth was laid bare for the entire family to see. The carefully constructed illusion of wealth, success, and superiority that my parents and Cleo had maintained for years was utterly obliterated in 3 short, factual comments. They were exposed as frauds, financial parasites living off the hard work and endless sacrifices of the daughter they constantly belittled. I hit the refresh button on my browser. This content is no longer available. Rowena had deleted the post. The public shame must have been suffocating. I could vividly picture the sheer panic unfolding in their house, the frantic pacing across the living room, the horrifying realization that they could no longer control the family narrative. They could no longer hide behind their lies. Uncle Evander had handed me the ultimate, indisputable vindication. But the digital humiliation was only a precursor to the real-world consequences. While the family was reeling from the exposure of their financial lies to our relatives, the legal machinery I had set in motion was slowly, inexorably grinding toward its final destination. The legal notices had been drafted, printed, and signed. And by Wednesday afternoon, reality was going to knock forcefully on the door of Unit 412. Wednesday arrived with a crisp, clear blue sky. I had strategically taken the afternoon off from the logistics firm to handle the final pieces of administrative work regarding the luxury apartment. Veda, the property manager, had requested I come down to the leasing office in person to sign the final lease termination release forms. This was a necessary step to ensure my credit would remain pristine and entirely disconnected from any future reckless actions Cleo might take. The leasing office was located on the ground floor of the massive glass and steel high-rise building. It was a beautiful, intimidating space, featuring imported marble floors, modern art pieces hanging on the walls, and plush velvet seating areas designed to make prospective tenants feel incredibly wealthy just by breathing the air. I was sitting comfortably at Veda's expansive glass desk, carefully signing my initials on the thick stack of termination documents, when the heavy glass doors of the main lobby violently swung open. I looked up from the paperwork. Cleo stormed into the lobby, clutching a crumpled piece of paper in her trembling hand. She was wearing her oversized designer sunglasses indoors, but they did not hide the furious red blotches creeping up her neck and cheeks. Right behind her were Tobias and Rowena. They looked equally frantic, breathing heavily, and deeply enraged. They marched straight past the concierge desk, completely ignoring the security guard who tried to ask them to sign in, and headed directly for Veda's glass-enclosed office. I sat frozen in my visitor's chair, the ink pen hovering over the final signature line. I had not planned this encounter. It was a terrifying, perfect alignment of fate. Cleo burst into the office, slamming the piece of paper down on Veda's pristine desk. She did not even notice me sitting off to the side, obscured by a large potted plant. "What is the meaning of this?" Cleo shrieked. Her carefully cultivated, smooth influencer voice was gone, replaced by a shrill, panicked screech. "I found this taped to my front door. A 30-day notice to vacate? You cannot evict me. I am a prominent public relations professional. I host vital networking events in this building. You are making a massive, illegal mistake." Veda did not flinch. She was a seasoned professional property manager who had dealt with entitled, hysterical tenants 100 times before. She calmly picked up the piece of paper, adjusted her reading glasses, and looked at Cleo with chilling professional detachment. "Ms. Wells," Veda said smoothly, her voice a stark contrast to Cleo's screaming. This is not a mistake. The primary leaseholder has submitted formal written notice to terminate the month-to-month agreement. Per the strict terms of the signed contract, the unit must be vacated within 30 days unless a new, financially qualified applicant takes over the lease and provides the necessary deposits. Cleo slammed her hands on the glass desk, her rings clicking loudly against the surface. I am the applicant. I live there. This is my apartment. My parents are my financial backers. Tell her, Dad. Tobias stepped forward, puffing out his chest, desperately trying to summon the arrogant, commanding authority he usually wielded at the dinner table. Now listen here, Veda. There has been a terrible family misunderstanding. We are the ones funding this unit. My daughter is a highly valued tenant in this building. You are going to rip up that ridiculous notice right now, and we will continue with the arrangement as usual. Veda sighed softly, opening a thick manila folder on her desk. Mr. Wells, I have the financial records for Unit 412 right here in front of me. For the past 36 months, every single rent payment, totaling over $120,000 over the life of the lease, has been paid directly from a checking account belonging exclusively to Maeve Wells. Your names do not appear on any financial instruments related to this property. You are not financially involved. Rowena gasped loudly, her hand flying dramatically to her chest. Well, Maeve is just our accountant. She handles the transfers for us because she works with numbers. Veda looked up, her expression hardening into a glare of sheer disbelief. Ma'am, Maeve Wells is not your accountant. She is the sole guarantor and the primary leaseholder. Legally, she is the only person on Earth who holds rights to that unit. Cleo is listed strictly as an authorized occupant, a guest. She has no standing here. Cleo spun around, ready to argue further, her mouth open to scream another demand, and that was when she finally saw me. I was sitting in the corner, holding the pen, a completely blank expression on my face. The color drained entirely from Cleo's face. Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. She looked like she had just seen a ghost. Maeve, Tobias growled, taking a heavy, threatening step toward me. Tell this woman to stop this nonsense right now. You are embarrassing us in public again. Fix this. I slowly placed the pen down on the desk. I stood up, smoothing the wrinkles from my skirt, making sure to stand tall. I am not embarrassing you, Dad. You are embarrassing yourselves. You are demanding rights to a property you cannot afford. I looked at Veda. Are all the forms signed and executed? I asked calmly. Yes, Maeve, Veda confirmed, stamping the documents with a heavy, official seal that echoed with finality. You are officially released from all financial liability for Unit 412 at the end of the 30-day period. I turned back to my family. The illusion was permanently shattered. The truth was ringing loudly in their ears, delivered not by me, but by a legal authority they could not manipulate, guilt-trip, or bully into submission. You have 29 days left, Cleo, I said, my voice barely above a whisper, yet it echoed loudly in the glass office. I suggest you start packing your designer clothes. Cleo's arrogant gaze fractured into a million jagged pieces. The reality of her impending homelessness, the loss of her pristine aesthetic, the collapse of her fake empire, all hit her simultaneously. But the nightmare was far from over, because the universe has a very strange way of delivering poetic justice at the exact moment it hurts the most. The physical reactions of my family were a tragic masterclass in defeated arrogance. Rowena's mouth hung open in a silent gasp, her hand clutching her pearl necklace so tightly her knuckles turned white, as if the jewelry could somehow anchor her to the wealthy reality that was rapidly slipping away. Tobias's face went from crimson to a sickly, pale white. He gripped the edge of Veda's desk to steady himself, his knees visibly shaking, the sheer weight of his financial impotence finally breaking his posture. They had spent their entire lives pretending to be giants, and in one afternoon, they were reduced to beggars in a glass box. You cannot do this, Maeve, Tobias whispered. His voice was stripped of all its former power and bluster. Where is she going to go? We do not have the space for her at our house. Her job requires her to be downtown. You are ruining her life over a stupid argument at a restaurant. It was not an argument, Dad, I replied, my voice remarkably steady. It was an eviction notice. She told me to pay the bill and get out. I did exactly what she asked. I am just applying that same, flawless logic to my entire financial portfolio. Cleo was hyperventilating, her chest heaving, her perfectly manicured hands tearing at the leather strap of her expensive handbag. You psycho! She screamed, her voice echoing out of the management office and bouncing off the marble walls of the sprawling lobby. You are just a jealous, bitter paper pusher. You are nothing. You hear me? You are nothing without us. Her screeching was loud, desperate, and deeply undignified. It drew the attention of the few people walking through the lobby. Among those people was a tall, sharply dressed woman carrying a leather briefcase and an iced coffee. She stopped dead in her tracks, her eyes widening behind her stylish frames as she witnessed the spectacle unfolding in the glass office. I recognized her instantly from the hundreds of photos Cleo constantly posted online. It was Eleanor, the senior executive director of the boutique public relations firm where Cleo worked. The very same prestigious firm that rented premium office space on the 15th floor of this exact building. The irony was so potent it felt scripted by a Hollywood writer. Cleo, lost in her blind, furious rage, did not notice Eleanor standing just 20 feet away. She continued to scream, tears streaming down her face, stomping her foot on the floor like a spoiled toddler denied a toy. I demand you fix this, Maeve. I am a senior associate. I cannot be seen moving back to the suburbs. It will destroy my brand. My followers will notice. Eleanor slowly walked toward the glass office. She stood in the open doorway, her expression a mixture of profound shock and deep professional disgust. Cleo? Eleanor asked, her sharp voice cutting through the hysterical crying like a blade. Cleo froze. Her entire body went rigid as she slowly turned around. When her eyes met Eleanor's, the remaining fragments of her fake persona disintegrated into dust. Eleanor, Cleo stammered, frantically wiping the dark mascara streaks from her cheeks, suddenly trying to adopt her sweet, professional tone. Hi. We are just dealing with a minor family real estate mix-up. It is nothing. Just a clerical error with the bank. A clerical error, Eleanor repeated coldly, looking from Cleo to the eviction notice sitting on the desk, and then to Veda, whom she clearly knew well. Veda gave a subtle, confirming nod, silently communicating everything Eleanor needed to know. I heard you screaming from the elevators, Cleo, Eleanor said, her tone icy and unforgiving. We work in public relations. Our entire business is based on maintaining composure, protecting images, and displaying grace under extreme pressure. Throwing a hysterical tantrum in the lobby of our corporate building over an eviction notice is the exact opposite of what this firm represents. Cleo stepped forward, her hands raised in a desperate pleading gesture. Please, Eleanor, it is my sister. She is trying to ruin me. She is crazy. She cut off my credit cards. Eleanor held up a single, manicured hand, stopping Cleo in her tracks. I do not care about your family drama. But I do care about the reputation of my firm. You lied on your background check about your permanent address. You lied about your financial independence to secure the client management role. You claimed you were a self-made entrepreneur. And now you're screaming like an unstable child in front of the building manager. Eleanor adjusted her grip on her briefcase. We will discuss your future at the firm tomorrow morning at 9 sharp. Bring your building access badge. Eleanor turned and walked away, her heels clicking sharply on the marble floor, leaving a wake of devastation behind her. The silence that followed was absolute and heavy. Cleo slowly sank to the floor, her knees giving out, burying her face in her hands. Her shoulders shook with silent, agonizing sobs. She had lost her luxury apartment. She had lost her fake influencer status. And she had just lost the job that funded whatever small portion of her life I had not already been paying for. Tobias and Rowena stared at the empty doorway where Eleanor had stood, their faces blank with the realization of total, inescapable ruin. The safety net was gone, the golden child was dethroned, and the invisible workhorse had just galloped out of their lives forever. I looked at Veda, gave a small, polite nod of gratitude for her professionalism, and walked out of the office. I walked across the marble lobby, pushed through the heavy glass doors, and stepped out into the warm afternoon sun. I had never breathed air so sweet. The aftermath of the lobby incident was a masterclass in desperate, pathetic backpedaling. A few days later, on a quiet, overcast Saturday morning, my doorbell rang. I checked the security camera feed on my phone. It was Tobias and Rowena. They were standing awkwardly on my porch, holding a small wicker basket of baked goods from a local bakery. They looked exhausted, diminished, and remarkably humble. Their expensive clothes looked slightly rumpled, as if they had not slept in days. I opened the front door, once again keeping the metal screen locked securely between us. "Hi, Maeve," Rowena said softly, her voice entirely devoid of its usual arrogant, biting edge. "We brought you some blueberry muffins. Can we come in? We really need to talk to you." "You can leave the muffins on the patio chair," I said, crossing my arms. "We can talk right here." Tobias sighed, rubbing his temples, looking 10 years older. "Maeve, things have gotten very bad. Cleo was officially let go from the firm. Eleanor fired her for unprofessional conduct and lying on her employment forms. She has no income. She has nowhere to go." "That sounds like a very difficult situation for her to navigate," I replied neutrally, offering zero sympathy. Rowena pressed her hands flat against the screen. "Please, Maeve. We are begging you. Just reinstate the lease for 6 more months. Just until she gets back on her feet and finds a new job. We promise, we swear to you on our lives, we will pay you back every single cent. Uncle Evander is threatening to cut us out of the family trust entirely if we do not fix this mess. We have nothing." I looked closely at the people who had raised me. I looked at the people who had treated my financial stability as their personal playground while relentlessly insulting my character. They were not apologizing for hurting me. They were not apologizing for the years of emotional abuse. They were apologizing because they had run out of my money and were facing the consequences. I reached into my pocket and pulled out a small, flat object. I slipped it through the narrow mail slot in the screen door. It dropped onto the wooden porch floor with a soft plastic clatter. Tobias bent down slowly and picked it up. He stared at it, sheer confusion washing over his tired face. It was the receipt from the seafood restaurant. The itemized bill for the massive lobster, the dozens of oysters, the expensive steaks, and the premium wine. At the very bottom, the bold total read $500. I had taken it to an office supply store and had it professionally laminated in thick, rigid plastic. "That is the final expense I will ever cover for this family," I said, my voice carrying the quiet, undeniable weight of absolute finality. "You told me to pay the bill and get out. I did exactly what you asked." "But Maeve," Rowena cried, thick tears welling in her eyes and spilling over her cheeks. "We are your family." "No, Mom," I corrected her gently, feeling a profound sense of closure. "I was your bank. And the bank is permanently closed. Good luck with the eviction." I closed the heavy wooden door, turned the deadbolt with a loud click, and walked away. I did not listen to their frantic knocking. I did not listen to their pathetic pleading. I went straight to my kitchen, poured a fresh cup of coffee, and began packing cardboard boxes. I had formally requested a transfer at my logistics firm earlier that week. The company had been trying to move me to their regional headquarters in Colorado for months, offering a substantial promotion and a massive relocation package. I had always turned it down because I felt tied to my family, anchored by the toxic guilt and the endless obligations they had hardwired into my brain since childhood. But I was no longer anchored. I was free. 2 weeks later, I watched my house fade away in the rearview mirror of my moving truck. I was driving toward the mountains, toward a new city, a new promotion, and a beautiful life where my hard-earned money, my time, and my energy belonged solely to me. Cleo was officially evicted and had to move into the cramped guest bedroom of my parents' house, taking her ruined influencer career and her shattered ego with her. Tobias and Rowena were forced to downgrade their vehicles, cancel their expensive country club memberships, and face the harsh reality of living within their actual means, while suffering the immense, Inescapable social shame inflicted by Uncle Evander's public revelation. They had tried to make me pay for the privilege of their abuse, but in the end, they were the ones who paid the ultimate price. Looking back, the biggest lesson I learned was not about standing up to bullies or protecting my credit score. It was about recognizing my own profound worth. For years, I allowed them to define my value based purely on how much money I could provide them. I swallowed their insults because I thought keeping the peace was the right thing to do. But true peace does not come from appeasing toxic people. True peace comes from setting an immovable boundary, stepping behind it, and watching the people who refuse to respect it burn their own bridges. You do not owe anyone your financial security, your mental health, or your presence, especially not the people who take those things for granted. Thank you so much for spending your time with me and listening to my story today. There are some people in my extended family who still believe I was too cruel, that letting my sister get evicted and lose her job was an overreaction. They say family should always provide a safety net, no matter what. Do you think I was too harsh in my retaliation, or was I justified in letting her face the severe consequences of her actions? I would love to read about your thoughts and your own experiences with toxic family members in the comments below. If you found this story relatable or empowering, please hit that subscribe button and give this video a like. It really helps the channel grow, and I cannot wait to share more stories with you in the next video. See you then.